Welcome everyone to this inaugural event of Poetry Bazaar from Colombo Institute for Human Sciences. We are extremely happy and grateful to have all of you here on a Sunday, on a Poya Day, and thank you so much. But at the outset, I would like to thank Pradeep and his team from Expographic Books for extending this hospitality and giving us this very, very pretty space to have this conversation. First of all, please join me in applauding Pradeep, and we would like to, have a few words from you, Pradeep.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to the Poetry Bazaar, organized by the Colombo Institute and in collaboration with Expographic. At Expographic, we believe that the bookshops are far more than places where books are sold. They are open, inclusive, and welcoming spaces for everyone. Books touch our societies and communities at every level, from education to employment, from shaping our culture to influencing politics. They enrich us, challenge us, and inspire us. That is why we at Expographic look forward to working with all stakeholders to build strong, vibrant communities around our bookshop and to nurture literature in all its forms. Thank you, and I wish you an inspiring and memorable evening with the Poetry Bazaar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pradeep. Now, a disclaimer. I address him as either Sir or Professor Perera because he's my teacher for the last 11, 12 years. Although I almost obey him in every other thing, and he hates to be addressed as Sir or Professor Perera. But being the very good Indian student that I am, I refer to him as either Sir or Professor Perera. So that's a disclaimer if it comes a bit odd to some people. So to begin with, sir, I would want you to elaborate a bit on our idea of Poetry Bazaar from Colombo Institute for Human Sciences, because it's a research institute. So why did we think of it? And secondly, would you just throw a bit of light on why, as a very established academic who has written a huge body of academic literature, you thought of poetry?
Thank you, Pooja. Colombo Institute was set up, I think, 15 years ago, and but then it had to be, or maybe even more. It had to be kind of closed down when many of us left the country. I went to India and others went to different parts of the world. When I came back, a couple of things happened. One is that I had a very weird combative experience in New Delhi just before I came. Sasanka Perera versus the South Asian University and part of the Indian state. So, that also gave this sense that, things like academic freedom and ability to do independent work, whether it's research or even creative writing kind of thing, that kind of space was diminishing in our part of the world. And India is a classic example where this has been happening for the last 10 years. Sri Lanka is not that badly off, but we are getting there too. So Colombo Institute in that sense was set up all those years ago, and more so now in its re-establishment to do the kind of things that ideally universities should be doing, which they are not, which is the kind of critical, cutting-edge, reflective research on one hand, as well as create a space for creative writing too, but creative writing that hopefully will go to the world. Because we do have a fairly serious interest in conversations across South Asia. So that is the basic logic upon which the institution itself was set up. And hopefully it will continue. But Poetry Bazaar was, obviously we are doing a lot of academic, intellectual kind of thing, quite a bit online, but also recently we had a conversation with Rama Chatterjee from Delhi on the Ramayana and so on and so forth, a very new, interesting take on Ramayana. Now, so we do that sort of thing, but we haven't really done, despite the claim, something on what might be called creative writing, right? So then this is Pooja's idea, it's not mine, the Poetry Bazaar. So she came up with the name and the idea, and that is once a month we will meet somewhere and we talk about poetry from the global south, written in English, or at least writing that have translations. So maybe next we can look at Vivi Murray's last work, or we can probably read Rudramurti Cheran's collection that has just been translated into Sinhala. So there are these. This is the idea, but we want to do it on every Poet Day, so people who don't want to go to the temple can come here. And hopefully Pradeep will not get too tired of us using his space once a month. So that is the idea. Now the second question, why write poetry? I guess I can say why not, in the sense that I am at this stage in my life, I am getting bored with social sciences, really very seriously bored. I've been bored for some time, but now I'm very clearly reaching that stage. And then we can ask the question, why is it that I dabble in photography as well? And I think that is also because I was bored with social sciences, and I thought, okay, can photography and creative writing be part of the methodological apparatus of social sciences? So this is the last class, part of the last class I taught in South Asian University, and that is the research methodology for master students. But there was one component that looked at how, or is it possible for creative writing and things like paintings and photography and so on to be brought into social sciences as serious repositories of information, not as decorative elements, but as serious repositories of information on violence, caste, whatever, right? So partly that is also the context in which I started looking at poetry. For example, if I read Cheran's work, given his central location in northern Sri Lanka, I learnt a lot reading his poetry on the violence in Sri Lanka's Tamil society. Looking at Aga Shahid, I forget his name, Ali, this Kashmiri poet's work, I learnt a lot about the conflict in Kashmir, more from his poetry than from the social science literature, which I was also familiar with. So there was that connection that I could see between formal social sciences and creative writing in that sense. And you may know that there has been a small school of thought that is looking into the possibilities of creating a body of creative writing as social science research themselves, in the sense that you write on the basis of fairly serious research, and you are talking about issues rather than just fiction, but these are fictionalized. So I was interested in all these things, and then I don't write in English. I mean, this is not my language. I don't like English. It doesn't. I don't like it in the sense all my academic writing is in English. That I don't have an issue with. I consider it a technical tool. But I think I tend to get creative and naughtier and more interested in things when I write in Sinhala. I don't think I can write a novel I don't think I can write a novel, period, but if I try to write one, it will not be in English. So this is not, I think it's about the way in which you deal with language. No, that it also depends on how familiar and how close you are to it. I am fascinated by Sinhala. I play with it. I make words for for concepts that do not exist in our language. I mean, I wouldn't do that with English because I said, okay, Oxford Dictionary can do it. Why would I want to? So that is the level of engagement. So English, so this is unusual in that sense. I haven't really written things in English creatively, and so I would say this is one of the first attempts. And lastly, in general, I mean, again answering your question about why would an established academic write poetry, you know, I think I don't mind being abused by the likes of my good friend Santusha and so on here, and say, you are writing bad poetry. So because then I have an excuse too. I said, yeah, of course I'm writing bad poetry because I'm not a poet. So what I'm trying to say is this: I don't find it challenging to deal with academia. I mean, academic kind of material. I've been doing this for a very long time. I have one book left that I think substantial thing that I need to finish. I find it very difficult to finish because I get entangled in these things. In the middle of this work on pilgrimage between Sri Lanka and Nepal and India, I got sidestepped so many times because I ended up translating a collection of Faiz Ahmad Faiz's poetry from English to Sinhala. Now that was completely unplanned because I got interested in what he had to say. And I stopped everything and started translating this. And then I got entangled in doing things like this. I've written a quarter of a novel, which I haven't even told Anoli. I just started writing because she gave me some book. I got interested in the structure. At one level, I also didn't like the structure as I got, but I got interested in it too. So I ended up writing 5 or 6 chapters. So I think at this stage in our lives. Oh, sorry. Oh, it's serious. Now I sound serious. So I didn't realize that I would see at this stage in life, one has to live more dangerously, I would say. And there's no point in telling this to people like Vivi because, these are creative people. They've been living dangerously for a very long time. So I'm about to, in a way, do it now. You say what you want to say. But see, it's also this, and you will know this. We may end up doing a lot of research, which may be, now none of my books are available in this country, right? I've been told that all of what I've written is available in the, what is this place, the Parliamentary Library. But then the Parliament, nobody reads there. So I don't know whether the new Parliament, maybe they might, but all these books are there, but no one reads them. But not in bookstores, because they're all published elsewhere, right? So I was thinking, now how is it possible for a person like me to deal with politics, emotions, and things like that, which people might actually engage with? Because even though some of my writing is available in Sinhala, I have translated or done it myself, it's to a certain extent what happens to the English language academic writing also happens to Sinhala. They say it's very difficult, it's very academic, and so on and so forth. So then the answer to that for me was that, okay, there is a lot of knowledge I've created, and I do know quite a bit of things by virtue of being an academic. I mean, this will apply to anybody who's in a university who reads and who's curious. So then how do you get some of these things out in a way that people might actually find it interesting? So then the form to do that is not academic writing. So to me, photography sometimes as, connected with some sort of short essay is one form, right? You have a picture and you read it. And the poetry obviously is the other, because these poems would not have been possible if I didn't go to the places I've been to in Japan and in Sri Lanka, in India, Pakistan, all these kinds of places, in Nepal and so on, and if I had not seen certain things that I saw in those places, and because I was there, or if I didn't feel certain things, because I was not in certain places and I was in other places, right? So I think poetry, the form, particularly this freestyle kind of form that I prefer, it gives me much more freedom to express myself about things from politics to whatever else in a way that I can do much better than I can do in academic writing. So this is, and for the longest time, I know this stuff, have been. I mean, I write in toilet paper and serviettes and whatever else I can find because I don't take it very seriously. So a lot of these things have been lost. And the others that came up in, ended up in emails and things that I think you're the one who told me I should publish this. So if one of the culprits. And then...
I'm sure they're happy about it.
Let's see, and then Anoli and I traveled to the Kurg, this in Karnataka, these mountains, and it's such a beautiful place. We were having breakfast and you could see this waterfall right in front of you, and I said, now's the time to edit this. So it started like that, right? So it took a long time to, I was in no particular hurry. So this is how it has, I think I've given a fairly expansive answer to your two questions. I think the rest is up to you. Right?
Yeah, so thank you so much. And, in the spirit of living dangerously, as my teacher underlined, so Poetry Bazaar as such doesn't have any particular format. For that matter, it is really not we are not thinking of a typical academic discussion here. But of course, the academic inputs are more than welcome. I mean, it is a space for poetry lovers or a shared space of people who love anything poetic, to share thoughts, expression, recitations, etc., etc. So to begin our conversations, now I would like to invite Nishara to share her thoughts about this event and the Poetry Bazaar and her thoughts on poetry in general. Some of you gathered here have been very generous enough to mail to us what you would be interested in contributing or presenting. So Nishara is one of them. So thank you, Nishara, and over to you.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Is it audible? Yeah, okay. So I quickly went through the poems, and now because I also heard Dr. Sasanka say something about how he stepped into writing and publishing, maybe I'll say something about my initial sort of impression also. What you said about Sinhala being the language which you like to play with, and English being more of sort of an academic tool. I also felt that sometimes when Sri Lankans or people who are using English as this sort of technical sort of way of dealing with the world, that we sometimes strip emotion a lot from when we are using English, and we sort of hide a lot of the emotion, whereas I think if we really get emotional, you have to say it in Sinhala. So I was also thinking about, while I was reading it, what it would have been like if these poems had been written in Sinhala. And I feel that there would have been like a very different feel to it. But at the same time, I think the poems that I liked and the ones I chose to want to kind of mention have something about, a little bit more of the colloquial sort of pithiness of Sinhala. Some, a little snappy thing that when we want to say something witty in Sinhala, it sounds a bit different to me. I'm not like, an expert in explaining this, but something witty and pithy in Sinhala sounds a bit different from English. I don't know whether others also agree with me or not, but there seems to be like a different tone. So when I was thinking about the poems that I kind of chose, I feel that it's also instinctively they're looking for that, maybe I am looking for that sort of pithy wittiness of colloquial Sinhala behind the sort of technical English. I also felt what you mentioned today about that these poems are part of a journey to different places, and you are trying to sort of capture the essence of certain places and certain situations. And maybe that's also why English is a useful tool for that, because I don't know whether language can explain a place to which it doesn't belong. So maybe English is sort of, the traveler's language more than maybe Sinhala. But I have also recently sort of got to know about, Sri Lankan expats who write about the places that they've been visiting. For example, Japan. So maybe there's a language similarity between Sinhala and Japanese that makes it easy to express a Sri Lankan Sinhala speaking person in Japan. So maybe that also has something to do with it. I don't know, I'm just throwing these thoughts out. And then also I was asked to choose a few poems which I liked. So I chose a few. And then I was wondering yesterday, do any of these have anything in common? And that's what I thought. The little sort of surprise at the end of the poem is probably what kind of maybe attracted me to these poems. So let me, maybe can I recite some of them? So there was poem number 32, which was called Rebirth. A very short one. Rebirth. Feelings muted, body mourns, memory dies, soul ceases, life stops, or maybe not. So I like that last line because in a way it sort of captures our sort of the experience of this subcontinent, the way that we look at the world. Things end, but maybe not. And I think we are always living in that. So I kind of sort of liked it. It's kind of a bit funny as well. Life stops or maybe not. There's a similar turn to poem 21, the electronic photo album. Saved in an unnamed corner of the internet, electronic photos of you. I dissolved as we traverse directions opposite. I pray our paths don't crisscross and we never meet again. So again, it's like something a little unexpected, and a kind of funny, but again, I think a common experience for people who are having kind of lives where we, there are things that we leave behind and don't regret. So I kind of liked that though, although that wasn't, someone told me, don't say you like a poem, explain all the reasons in a complicated way, but I'm just going to say I liked it. Then a similar story about, I think there's a bit of philosophy in some of the poems which I liked. There's poem 49, You and Yourselves. You were never solely one, nor the other, of yourselves, but all in one at the same time. These selves pine, rearing for a moment to embrace each other. And I kind of liked the thoughts or the philosophy behind the sense of self, and sort of the moment of introspection that came from that. then maybe I'll just mention the two poems which I kind of ended up sort of saving side by side, not intentionally, but then after I kind of printed it out, I realized I kind of put them side by side, and then I realized they're kind of saying something sort of contradictory but complementary to each other. These are poem 72 called Pigeons and poem 86 called The Third Eye. So the third eye is another one of those slightly philosophical things, which again I liked but don't know exactly why and how to say it. The third eye does not see the world. The two eyes see. It's blind. It sees to the mountains, to the flowing rivers, and does not see the setting sun or the rising moon. Only feelings in the heart, thoughts in the mind, and the sorrow in the inner self. And what it sees, what it conjures, has no existence in the world where the sun sets and the moon rises. And I kind of like the contradictoriness in a way, though the main character here is the third eye. In a sense, it is saying the third eye does not see certain beauties of the world, and that was a kind of an unexpected conclusion. But I think that this is a poem that I will sort of keep in mind and keep going back to, because I sort of think there's something to keep thinking on that. So the one that I took and sort of set accidentally side by side with the third eye is Pigeons. Perched across wires, crisscrossing the heavens, above streets and atop city lamps that only glimmer without the benefit of light, adding elegance and design to the burden of culture amid what is left of nature. Pigeons, do you see the shit on the ground that is not your own? So while there's the beauty of the world, then on the other hand, there's the dirt, the shit on the ground. And the pigeons, again, are the sort of main character overlooking it. I found that also something that I will keep aside and come back to. And I think I will end by saying that I think that's the interesting and important thing about poetry. It's something that you are drawn to, and then you also keep aside and keep coming back to, because it sort of catches something, some experience or some emotion or some explanation of seeing the world or of society. And I think those are the poems that other people get drawn to if there is something in common. So not all the poems in the book would be poems that I would personally be drawn to, because I think it has to sort of connect with something that maybe I too not really experience, but maybe I can understand the experience. So those would be the ones that I personally would be drawn to, and that's why I chose these particular ones. And I have to say, not all of them do I understand or like, because those experiences are poems in a way are like diaries, they are your experiences. So it's not all of them that I would be drawn to, but I chose the ones that I thought, these are interesting, and I want to think on it, and I want to sort of digest it a little bit more, or it kind of maybe catches a memory or something of my own, that maybe there is a connection then between the experiences of different people. And it also, I believe, says something about our society as well, to a certain extent, about how there's sort of a collective way of looking at things where people can relate to it in that sense. Okay, I'll stop at that, and hope others will also share like the poems that they were drawn to, because I know there will be different poems, maybe not the same ones.
Thank you so much, Nishara. I mean, these were very interesting, and also the genuineness with which you put your thoughts across. Well, coming to your point about translation, you said at some point in the beginning that you were thinking that how will it sound in Sinhala, and this was the same thought I had when I was reading his poetry, and I was like, some of these poems would sound so good in my native language. I mean, I come from Assam, and Assamese is my native language. And suddenly I started, although I was reading them in English, I started to think about them in Assamese and with some kind of specificities. And then, I'm not a translator or neither. I think I have done a recitation when I was like in school, maybe 5th standard. But I felt like, translating them just out of my curiosity of how will it really look when we put the translation together. So I'll be kind of reciting 3 of those poems, hopefully. But before that, I would like to come to Dilki. Hi. No. No, we are excited to listen from you. So we would like to come to you, Dilki. Is it okay? Okay. So okay. Let me before that, maybe I can translate this the main poem of this collection, that is Let Us Be Silent. But before that, since you have been translating poetry quite a bit, what is your take on translating poetry?
I think it's next to impossible to translate poetry, and what you can try to do is to kind of do some kind of a transposition of meaning, because so this is why for the longest time I never attempted to translate poetry. I did instead academic writing, which is straightforward, right? So most of what I've translated were academic things because the challenge was less, and also because I was teaching, I needed certain things in Sinhala which I needed for my classes. So, and I did translate a couple of works of fiction. Again, it was more manageable because the language was, language was more open to translation when it came to fiction. So I did not think I had the capacity to translate poetry, but then I experimented with one of these longish poems by Escobar, Tonight I Can Write. This has been translated into, I don't know, from Spanish to a zillion languages. So I looked at this early American translation, American English. I forget the name of the translator, and Anoli and I were in Dalhousie in India. These are all these mountains. It was very peaceful, nice, these beautiful trees and so on, until a few days later this bunch of Punjabis came and made a mess of things. But until then we were in absolute, it was like in heaven. So then I thought, okay, now there is perfect place for me to attempt something I haven't done before. But to do that, I had actually started reading quite a lot about the poet, his politics, his nastiness, all of that. The guy was almost a rapist in our city, Sorry, I'm not Escobar. I'm talking about Neruda. Yeah. So, and so it took me a while to, I don't think. To translate a poem, it's not only about language. It's never really about language. You need to have the English and whatever the source language and the target language, you have to have control over that. But then you also have to have a fairly good nuanced understanding of the multiple contexts, the time the poet wrote originally and his politics, all these kinds of things. So it took me a while to actually read quite a lot about Neruda in order to translate that one poem. But when I did that, I thought it came out fairly well. Anoli thought it read well at that time. I was still in the mountains before the Punjabis descended. So then I thought, okay, maybe finally I have figured out the methodology to do it. That is, if you are going to translate poetry, then you have to first read right around the poet and the context and whatever not, in order to come to the language. So when I did Rumi, again, I had to translate, I had to really read as much as I could about him. I mean, we are talking about a man who was writing poetry in the 13th century in Persian. So then Persian to first to German and French, Western translations, and then to English in the 19th century, to American English in the 20th century. It's the American English that took it to the world, right? But in that process, not all, most references to Islam were removed. So what we read about Rumi when he talks about love and people get fascinated, oh my God, he talks about love, but he's talking about love not to some woman or man, but to God. But it does not read like love to God, right? So now I had to figure out all these things, explain all this in a fairly lengthy introduction, then come to the translation. Because otherwise all this will be out of context. The same with Faiz now. So I think that methodology of translation, particularly from when it comes through another language. So here, from 13th century Persian to 19th century English, early 20th century English, 20th century American English, and then to Sinhala. So that you imagine what might have been lost. So Faiz, Urdu, 21st century English, Sinhala. So it's probably the disturbances, mistranslations would be slightly less. But then again, I had to talk to his daughter, who is a family friend. So these kinds of things. So and read quite a lot, without which you really can't translate. It's not just about translating meaning. It is also about translating nuance, right? And so I think I might. I think I have probably in my own mind come up with a methodology for translating poetry, but I still think the better way to do it, of course, is from the source language to the target language. So, but then if you try to do that, a lot of these global poetry will not come to us. Now, who's going to translate from 13th century Persian to Sinhala? There's no one who can do it. Who can even translate from the 1980s and 70s Urdu to contemporary Sinhala? You cannot do that. Forget all that. What about Tamil? Cheran's poetry, which came out as a translation just a few weeks ago, I don't know, but I have a feeling it must have come through English too. I'm not sure. But Tamil, there is some possibility it can be translated directly. But there are very few people who can do it, right? So I think now Ranjit can change it. He's one of the country's best translators from English to Sinhala. But Ranjit translates academic stuff and some fiction. But it's a difficult thing, right? But I think this has to be done, even though it will have to come through these other languages, in the process of which you might lose something. But then that explanation I think we have to give. I mean, that is the responsibility of the translator.
Sure. So with that, I hope, I'm guessing all of you must have read this poem, Let Us Be Silent. And I have translated this into Assamese. I know for sure that it is a language unknown to all of you here, but still I would like to recite it, and I hope it doesn't bore any of you. So, okay, I'll start. Let us be... so it's Let Us Be Silent. Ami nirobe thaku aha. তাল গছৰ কাষত এই কেফেখনত আমি নীৰৱে থাকোঁ আহা আৰু চুৰি কাটা চামুচবোৰক ক'বলৈ দিওঁ কথা আমাৰ কাপুচিনোৰ পৰা ওলাই অহা এই ধোঁৱাবোৰত কিমান যে আমাৰ স্মৃতিবোৰে লৈছে সিহঁতৰ ভাগ আমি নীৰৱে থাকোঁ আহা আজি পৃথিৱীখনে নিজৰ ভাষাতে কিছু সপোনৰ কথা কৈছে যিবোৰ এসময়ত আছিল আমাৰ। আমি নীৰৱে থাকোঁ আহা আৰু শব্দবোৰক দিওঁ অলপ আজৰি, যিবোৰে এতিয়া হেৰাইছে সিহঁতৰ অৰ্থ। আছে মাথো এটি ছন্দবিহীন কোলাহল। আমি নীৰৱে থাকোঁ আহা, চাওঁচোন কিজানি আমাৰ ভৱিষ্যতখন পঢ়িব পাৰি কাপচিনৰ এই ধোঁৱাত। Thank you. Okay, moving forward, I would.
Tell me, why did you translate?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I mean, as I was telling just before I started talking to you about translations, I mean, I translated 3 of these, right? And I was mentioning that some of these poems kind of spoke to me in my language. I was reading it in English for sure, but they were speaking to me in my language, and it was reminding me of some of the very well-known poets from Assam. For example, there was this poet, late Nabakanta Borua. He wrote this very beautiful, and it is still very popular. It's a poem title. If you translate it to Assamese, it is it can be translated, "Do you remember Arundhati?" Now Arundhati is the woman he is addressing. The poet is addressing in his poem. So somehow it just made me think that maybe it is something it's sounding so similar and familiar, but I think that's the beauty of poetry, and the good poetry, which has this very universal appeal. However, when I was also translating, and I would also recite this poem, The Return, at some point in the poem, you use this phrase, wild orchids, and I felt that, in Assam we have this very popular variety of orchids known as kopo. And it is used in our cultural festivals, and female dancers used to put it in their hair, and I felt like rather than using orchids, while I use the word kopo, although and kopo is foxtail orchid. So I felt like, with some kind of cultural specificity, because it is in Assamese, I thought it was, I took that liberty, of course, as someone who was translating it out of just mere curiosity or hobby, but it was sounding, I felt, so closer home, as well as which was having a very universal appeal. So, but if I have to put it very simply, I just took to translating this poem because it just spoke to me, and it just made me feel closer home, and I just thought that maybe it sounds even better in my language. I also felt I'm not that fluent in Hindi, but I also felt that if it could be translated to Hindi also or Urdu, it would be equally beautiful. So yeah, that's my reason. But moving forward from there, we would like to have Santushya, and then we'll come to Dilki. So Santushya, thank you so much again for expressing your interest in reciting some of these poems. So yeah, over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you, Sasanka, for sharing this poem. Okay.
No, that will not work.
Okay, I should hold it closer than this. I might have to eat it. Okay. Okay.
Because I was wondering, was I was talking over here?
So thank you very much for inviting me to give some comments. And because I'm an incurable person to study stuff, I went through this book through and through, including the preface and the foreword and
That's
all
wonderful.
that. I can't help myself. So I want to start, Sasanka, with a poem from Neruda to put this in context, because in this Poetry Bazaar, as well as in your introduction to the book and your talk today here as well, you are trying to frame why you write poetry. So Pablo Neruda, whom we have spoken about here, says it, and it was the time, and it was the age. Poetry arrived in search of me. I don't know where it came from winter or a river. I don't know how or when. No, they were not voices, they were not words, nor silence. But from the street I was summoned, from the branches of the night, abruptly from the other, among violent fires. On returning alone, there I was, without a face, and it touched me. So he says, there I was, without a voice in the night, and it touched me, and he kind of found his face. So in Pooja's introduction to the book, she has titled it The Poet Within the Sociologist, and he has given his own idea. But when I read this book through and through with a lot of effort, I was reflecting whether he's actually a product of literary imagination, an academic or a thinker or a sociologist or anthropologist. I call him anthro for short. So whatever it is, whether he is in fact like Freud or someone, some people are in fact, when you look back, they are actually products of literary imagination. And this is something I saw throughout this book in many of the poems. Some of them overtly has words like George Orwell's, the names of books, and some of them seem to be derived from other poems. He has one poem titled Paradise Lost, and then there is one called Amidst the Maddening Crowd. I will come to that. Speaking, because we are speaking a lot about native language and poetry, and because now suddenly after reading this book, I have started viewing Sasanka as a product of literary imagination. I will read one poem, You Are Not in Love with Me. That is the title of the poem. You are not in love with me. You are only in love with yourself and the thought of being in love with you. This, Sasanka, I don't know whether you can recall this song. There is a very rare duet by two singers, I think Amaradeva, Pandit Amaradeva and Victor Ratnayaka. It says, Ayage Akre, Oba Hisa Randawa, Sanasunu Mohotaka, Obema Dasin, Ma Oba Dutua, Ayata Nove, Obata Pamani Oba Adare. So I think in a parallel universe, something like this has been written in our own language, in another context. And also, you are not in love with me, you are in love with yourself is a very common recurring dialogue in many American movies and so on. But when you try to sort of look at the poet and the translation and the cultural sort of backdrop in which he is writing this poem, suddenly it has a new meaning. I personally don't think this is a stunning or a mind-blowing poem, but this means something more to me when I read it in the context of a Sinhala language speaker. Then there was, of course, Thomas Hardy, who wrote Far from the Maddening Crowd, and Thomas Hardy got Far from the Maddening Crowd from a poem by Thomas Gray, who wrote an elegy written in a country churchyard. It says, far from the maddening crowd's ignoble strife, their sober wishes never learned to stray. Along the cool sequestered veil of life, they kept the noiseless tenor on their way, off their way. So now shall we read this poem? Could you please hold it? sorry about that. So now if you think of Gabriel and Bathsheba and Far from the Maddening Crowd, then going back and thinking about this poem that gave the name the Far from the Maddening Crowd to Thomas Hardy, and then now if you come to Sasanka like a century later, it's very interesting how sometimes maybe unknown to him or known to him, or maybe he has never read it, but this is like a element on soil, biochemical element on soil. I mean, all these things that we don't recognize for its atomic stage, it somehow nourishes you in all kinds of ways. Now let's read what Sasanka has to say amidst the maddening crowd, not so away apparently. Ears clogged, sealed with toilet paper, not to hear the noise that makes no sense, eyes closed shut, keeping out the irrelevant visuals of human existence, mind wishing to sleep, but remaining awake against the will. When will the maddening crowd allow a respite for you and me? So now when you think about it, tying it, I mean, I'm sure you didn't think of all this perhaps, but isn't it so interesting that poetry, like water or time or some element, it sort of travels through centuries, through continents, and it nourishes our imagination, and it gives words to us to frame and explain our life. So it is something very beautiful. You know, like some decades ago, when a mother gave birth and she felt depressed, people just used to call it baby blues. There was no word for it. But then medicine later found out it's called postpartum depression. It has a scientific basis. So like this, I think way before science or academia explains something to you, poetry has explained human condition to you. So I see some of these poems as a flowing force of the power of poetry itself, the power of language itself, and the universality that overflows everywhere. So I liked it very much. For these reasons, and maybe I'm overanalyzing, maybe these are not things he has thought, but a lot of abstract artists do this too. They draw something and people find great meaning and all that. Maybe sometimes you're just doing it, right? So I think it's lovely. I really liked it a lot. And then there is this one that I liked. It's not my favorite, but a teacher's lament. Since I thought nothing that is worth knowing could be taught, I urged them to be themselves. I implored to let their minds fly beyond the known and imagine horizons, to traverse what was taken for granted, to transgress the dogmas of our times. Above all, I pleaded with them not to follow me. Now I have not, okay, so I have not printed the rest of the lines, but it goes with something that says, but it keeps following me, but the shadow keeps following me, and I know that, teacher's lament says, I know that my, this shadow that follows me is actually their shadows. So the students have not stopped following you. So I think this because, late I am also a teacher. So this is a sort of a, we think that we are like scaffoldings. Why I like this poem is, we like to think that our role as a teacher is like a scaffolding. The greatest achievement of a teacher is when the student no longer needs the teacher, like the scaffolding comes off, teacher should come off. And we often, like Sasanka, implore them not to follow you like the shadow, but now that I'm thinking deeply about your poetry and you and history, and I'm a bit too much of analysis going on in my mind. But I was reflecting, Sasanka, it depends. This piece will be told by a teacher to a student when the teacher is also still evolving. I mean, you are a dispensable teacher, then you can say these things. There it is. So, yeah. Above all, I pleaded with them not to follow me. But I know my shadow is not my own, it's theirs. But you see, when you are simply a lecturer, this you can say. If you are simply a teacher, you can say this. But when you are the guru of someone, the transformative teacher, your teacher, the teacher becomes the student embodies the teacher, their souls kind of flow, and this is something you can't be rid of even if you want to. But so I would like to think of this poem as like you're still getting there to greatness, so you have some work to do with yourself. Then so some poems, Sasanka, in this book, as I told you, they are not my favorites. I don't really care for them too much. So because I was so obsessively reading this book, I actually cut and pasted them to a Word document, some of them, and I read them as a paragraph. So if it is also good as a paragraph, it's not a good poem, right? Right, so I am, but then I'm not going to tell them here. I will tell them to you, of course. But then here is a very lyrical, beautiful poem. I really like this because it is so lyrical. I just like it the way I like to look at like a picture of Aishwarya Rai or something. You just look at it because it's so beautiful. So it's called Cessation. It says, memory stops. Love becomes a residue. Sorrow follows the self. As a somber shadow, passion bids adieu beyond the oceans. I think it is very lyrical language. It has these words like somber shadow, some alliteration, and sorrow, follow, all these, it's the best of the silkiest words kind of playing with you. Although it's very small, it's very lyrical, but also this is what everything becomes, I think, not just love. Finally, even our body, our ashes, our memories, it will become residue, and all great people will be forgotten and reduced in the great landscape of time and life. So I think it's very beautiful. It's a simple poem, but I really like the smoothness and the silkiness and the alliterations and all that. It's very beautiful. But if you asked me, what is, in the song of Solomon, they say, I'm the rose of Sharon, lily of the valley, the most beautiful. So if you asked me of what is the most beautiful poem, that to me in this, it would be this history of my life. I'll tell you why. So the history of my life. Mine is a life well lived. I have memories of victories, of defeats, and of past loves with no regrets. Now I feel the emptiness in the past, but filled every day to the brim by you, which only you can fill with the love and passion only you possess. That emptiness in the past I now feel comes when I think where you have been all this time, when I thought my life was well lived. So I think this is a poem, this is a gift of a poem, only a person who has lived a bit long can give you. I think a young lover can't write a poem like this unless they imagine so. I think it is a really beautiful poem because I think there is no age for love. You find the most transformative or the most life-defining, soul-defining love you can find it fairly later in life, and that love will put in context to you everything else that you were thought was perfect and good and victorious and no regrets. And sometimes it is so powerful, you start, this is how I think, that you start reimagining all the good and the bad of the life past. What if that love with so much passion, so much wonderful was there? You know, if you reimagine, even what is not regrettable becomes a bit of a reflective regret. So I think it is very nice. I absolutely adore this this poem, because it tells me the timelessness of love and its potential to re-narrate everything to you, and that you can be born again in the imagination of this love that you didn't have, but you re-narrate your life with that person in it. Sometimes love can be so powerful. So because I don't want to keep on talking, I want to just give a general comment on this book, Sasanka. After I read these poems, I really feel you are just a poet. Some days a good poet, some days a bad poet. You know, some days we do good diagnosis, other days we do not so good diagnosis. But in essence, I think after reading this, I mean, I've read your Rumi translations, whatever the books I've gotten my hands on, I have read your creative work. I think this book kind of tells me that you are a product of a literary imagination, whether you are doing it consciously or not. And I think the most beautiful, one word, if I had to use one word to describe all this good and bad poetry, in my judgment, that the passion you have for life. And I think suffering is what you are not happy to, like, you know, a punishment is what you are not happy to suffer for. Passion is what you are happy to suffer for. So like, we never say Christ suffered in the cross. We say it's his passion on the cross. He was happy to suffer. So I think in this way, not by any means I'm trying to equalize you with Christ, but I think you know, the good. Because sometimes my friends say, "Who is this guy who looks like Jesus Christ?" You know, I'm like, no, don't go there. So no. But I think you know, it is a sort of a reflection of everything, little things that has made you, like your language, everything you have seen and all that. But it shows what you're happy to suffer for. It's a sort of a testament to the joy with which you, the good and the bad, the suffering and everything has gone through. So, you know, you're happy to suffer. You know, it's the passion. I think it's really beautiful. So congratulations, and I will tell you in, what was the word she used? Pithy, right? Like, you know, in a series of pithy texts, I will tell you all about your bad poetry. Okay, so thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Santusha, and we also look forward to your notes on bad poetry. But since I've been his student, so on this note on him being a great teacher, I was just you know, telling him just before this event began, that in reference to some friends, that, you know, if they would have been supervised by him, they would have completed their PhDs by now. So that's the kind of good and great teacher he is and supervisor. But I would like to know some of your comments on Santusha's inputs and yeah, very fascinating thoughts.
See, I most of the time I don't understand what Santusha says, and but when it comes to good and bad poetry, I get it, right? That has to be the case, no? No, but see, I told you this before, that I wish, if not all, most medical people have read what you have read. Then we'll have much better health system. right? People will be more nuanced in that sense. I mean, how many people would have known where this madden crowd has come from? I mean, come on. I thought it was... Anyway, my suggestion is this. We'll have a chat when we go downstairs, but maybe there are others who want to talk.
But before that, I would like to recite one of your poems, that is The Return. But I would like you being the poet, and you haven't read any of your poems till now, could you please read out that poetry in English? Just read out, and then I will recite in. This is The Return, page 74. It is the 47th poem.
I see, Pooja, you also have to understand, I write, I don't really recite. I mean,
No, you don't have to recite, just read it. Yeah.
Okay, slightly better. The Return. In the darkness of the night, when the full moon floated across the clear sky and hid behind the solitary cloud, my memories of you that had lapsed long ago came back without warning. In the absence of my memories of you, I was a mountain slope where wild orchids blossomed surreptitiously after the monsoons had visited. While I stopped thinking of you, I was like the parched land encountered in almost forgotten travels, blessed with an unanticipated rain, offering an unclear future, without being noticed. And now, hiding in the brightness of the moon and taking cover behind the solitary cloud, my memories of you have come back uninvited.
Thank you. And I would recite it in Assamese. Punar agomoni. Ratir endharat, purnimar junake upongi, sposto akahot, jetia lukale, eti okolhoria daorar arot. Hothate agomoni hol, bilin hoi joa tumar smitibur. মোৰ মনত তোমাৰ স্মৃতিৰ অবিহনে মই যেন হৈ পৰিছিলোঁ এখন পৰ্বতৰ ঢালৰ দৰে, য'ত বাৰিষাৰ পিছত এথোপা বনৰীয়া কপৌ ফুল ফুলিছিল অজানিতে। যেতিয়া তোমাৰ কথা ভাবা দিছিলোঁ এৰি, মই যেন হৈ পৰিছিলোঁ পাহৰি যোৱা এটি ভ্ৰমণত সন্মুখীন হোৱা এটুকুৰা শুকান মাটিৰ দৰে, য'ত একো সাৰ সুৰ নোহোৱাকৈ আহিছিল এজাক ধন্য কৰি দিয়া বৰষুণ, যিয়ে গোপনে অৰ্পণ কৰি গৈছিল এটি অস্পষ্ট ভৱিষ্যত। আৰু এতিয়া কোনো নিমন্ত্ৰণ নোহোৱাকৈ আগমনী হৈছে লুকাই থকা তোমাৰ স্মৃতিবোৰ এটি অকলশৰীয়া ডাৱৰৰ আঁৰত। Thank you. Thank you. So now we come to Dilki finally. Dilki, please. Good night.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Pooja, for inviting me for this evening while giving me a chance to be a part of this book, Let Us Be Silent by Sasanka Perera. I have to tell you, like, frankly, I'm not a big speaker. I wanted to recite some poems actually at the very outset, but you wanted me to tell why I picked them up. So I chose some poems, couple of poems, at my very personal choice. But coincidentally, all of them are love poems, right? So I liked them, and I read the preface. In the preface, Sasanka had said, like, he writes poetry for his simple pleasures. So on the same reason, I picked mine. It was pleasurable to read, and I loved them. I love the structure, the short structure, and the words you have chosen to express even the very, very fine feelings in right words. I like the structures as well, as I said, and the run-on lines you have you have done like very meaningfully and tastefully, where it gives like a space for the reciter to play. So I think I would do it now. Let me recite. Oh, no, I'll read it. Missing by Sasanka Perera. I miss you dearly on every passing day, on every moment I wake and you tiptoe unannounced into my dreams. But missing is also a feeling of fulfillment, that my thoughts, my love, my desires for you had an object in you, though at a distance. Missing is life in its completeness. Thank you. And I have another one that is my, I think, most favorite one. As I told you earlier, like that also a love poem. Where is that? This one. No, 57. No, I can see. Yeah, you can make it bigger now. Right, okay. Right, I can manage. Stargazer's Memory by Sasanka Perera. Can you remember the night we sat together in the armchair, gazing at the stars, the full moon, and the flickering lanterns? Can you remember that night? The magic and the poetry it decided, when our souls became one. Can you remember that night? Thank you. Give me the armchair if you are done with it.
Thank you, Dilki. That was absolutely so beautiful, the way you recited. Okay, now I was thinking that some of our other friends in the audience can share a few words and thoughts, or even recite. Yes, sure. So, okay, so we start with Vivi.
So I'm not really great with impromptu speaking other than when I'm in the classroom. So I wrote down some of my thoughts. So a lot of you were talking about the love poems and the other. So I thought of talking about the poems in the section Matters of the World in the book. So this section sort of captures the disenchanted consciousness of like a 21st century intellectual, I thought. Disillusioned with politics, culture, human behavior. So the voice here is deeply critical and also darkly humorous, kind of swinging between satire and despair. And so I was left with the sense of a world out of joint, and where truth has eroded, rhetoric is masking cruelty. Language itself is corrupted. That's the feeling I got from those poems. However, the very act of writing these poems suggests that poetry, even in bleakness, can function as dissent and testimony. And the poet himself in his preface says, Sasanka, that you wrote for relaxation and catharsis. So that comes out a lot in that, I thought. Of course, silence is important in this collection. It's the title as well. So I was trying to analyze that silence. So it's not empty but full of traces of meaning, that silence. What something has been in the past, things that have existed previously. And what is most sacred is also something that doesn't have words. That feeling comes in the book. Silence is also a refuge, and as in, for example, amidst the madding crowd. Silence is also a space of reflection and mortality. So, for example, in Winter Dawn, quiet beauty hides death in the air. Similarly, tales, withered flowers tell, and also dust speak of the silence of decay. So I thought that was very interesting. Silence is also solitude, invisibility. For example, in the lily and the shadow, But silence in Scream is imposed by isolation. So there is that too. Mostly I felt silence is resistance to noise and superficiality. It's also tied to yearning and transcendence, like Out of Shadows and Ghost in Cyberspace. It's also about desire that cannot be fulfilled. So there's multiple readings of silence and a resistance against everything that's fake. So I'll just end by reading Caged Passion, which I thought was really nice. Love becomes sedate, packaged as respect, and passion is caged. Hope, intrigue, tenderness disappear from life to the edge of imagination. Have we not become spectators of ordinariness? So, though this book is about silence, it is also a place where he breaks the silence about that ordinariness. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivi. I mean, it gives us, I think, a lot of, food for thought to, unpacking the meaning of silence itself, which you dealt with, and, silence also being a form of dissent. That's really beautiful. And perhaps we can have a couple of more from our friends in the audience to share their thoughts or anything they like to add or suggest. Yeah, but before that, you might have to suffer a bit more because I want to end it with the translation of this last poem I did, which is a fairly short one, Existence, Non-Existence. And I would like someone to volunteer in reading it in English. It is the poem, just a second, where is it? Yeah, it is the 17th poem on page 41. So I would like to have a volunteer for it, just to read it in English, and then I would kind of recite it in my language.
I don't mind.
Yeah, sure. That's great. It's page 41.
And also give you the book.
Oh, thank you. 41.
She's a proper English language.
Yeah.
Let's see.
At least from England, right?
41 the muse has got.
No,
No,
this
17.
Oh, sorry.
is poem 17, page 41.
Need to start off on the right track. Existence,
Yes,
non-existence.
yes.
Existence.
Hello? Existence, non-existence. It has escaped from my mind what I was going to say, what was in my mind. I am unmoored from existence and delinked from memory. I am here and I see, but what I see has no reference, no sense, no pain, no pleasure, no smell. I exist and I don't.
Thank you. I think this is one of those poems which really kind of, shows us the contemporary realities of present times, and where I think so many of us at least are thinking through some existential questions. To recite it in Assamese, Moi asu aru moi nai. মনৰ পৰা সৰি গৈছে ক'বলৈ ওলোৱা কথাবোৰ আছিল যি মনৰ মাজত মই অস্তিত্বৰ পৰা মুকলি আৰু স্মৃতিবোৰৰ পৰা বিচ্ছিন্ন। মই ইয়াতে আছোঁ আৰু মই দেখি আছোঁ, কিন্তু যি দেখা পাইছোঁ তাৰ দেখোন কোনো উল্লেখ নাই, কোনো অৰ্থ নাই, নাই কোনো বেদনা, নাই কোনো সুখ, কোনো সুগন্ধ নাই। মই আছোঁ আৰু মই নাই। Thank you so much. And with this, I would like to conclude our event, our session. And I would like to thank all of you once again, Expographic Books, our very generous photographers, Kaushalya, Darshi and her team. And the last few words, I would like you to share with the audience.
There is food, it's cooked. This is a bad poem, right? They are in boxes. Hopefully they'll come out of the boxes and we can eat the damn things. It's downstairs somewhere.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Somebody has to go and set it up though.
okay. So with this poetic note on this
Bad poetic note.
Okay, quote, okay, bad is like under quotation marks. So, on this bad poetic note, we are ending today's session with the hope that we will meet again for our next session of Poetry Bazaar. You will all surely get an invitation, and if you have any suggestions or comments, please feel free to mail us or even write to us on our Facebook page. We'll be so happy to engage with all of you. Thank you.
And thank you, Pooja. Thank you.